Okay, we're off and running. Thank you for joining us today for the inaugural Paueru Gai Dialogues.
If I'm not open to the story of people, then I'm not being open to the possibilities of my survival and their survival.
Truth is often not told correctly, not told in its entirety, and not told from everyone's perspective.
And we really understand storytelling as witness. So our shared vulnerabilities being a strength that gives us mad perception, that drives our art making, our creation, and our connection forward. We also work with lived experience and trauma-informed frameworks. So we understand trauma not just as a psychiatric diagnosis, but as a response to injuries that are extremely common in our society, including the historical legacy and ongoing reality of colonization.
Really, the power of history and art and cultural practice is so important to our joy, but also at the core of resilience.
I decided that it was time, or I should attempt to resurrect that community in my songs, in my writing. And I want the Nisei to feel whole again, and I want the Sansei to be filled in about their past.
I could briefly maybe say this is something that I face a lot with folks. And I like to say, start with what you love doing. Start with what gives you energy. You're no good to everybody else if you're exhausted and burnt out and all of that, right? And I think we're all born on this earth with different gifts to share.
Just as a bus jerked into movement again after a stop, I felt this gentle tug on my sleeve. And I opened my eyes and looked down to see an elderly Asian woman sitting in front of me. She caught my eye, and without speaking a word, she pointed to an empty seat behind me, nodding like she understood. I thanked her, and in doing so, I realized that she did not speak any English. And it's a rare occurrence to be truly seen and cared for by a stranger in public space in Toronto, even more so when there's a language barrier.
When I talk about our experience coming to a new land, our experience being cast out of our homes and province, our return, it is a secondhand story, retold so many times it becomes mythologized. And there's always so much left unsaid, so many stones left unturned. It's history that many of us have absorbed through books and photographs, songs and poetry, if we're lucky, through family stories. The willingness to finally tell our stories led to the 1977 Japanese-Canadian Centennial, which in turn gave rise to the first Powell Street Festival. The success of that first festival opened the door another crack. As if roused from a long slumber by the sound of Japanese taiko and the smells, the glorious smells of home, Japanese Canadians returned to Powell Street. They would return year after year.
When we're dealing with such serious subject matter, that there are moments of lightness and humor that we can, laugh over, shared food and breaking bread and like these kind of ceremony of gathering.
I immediately thought of the Nisei and how their attitudes and actions in rebuilding their post-war lives had achieved a level of acceptance and success that grants us, of succeeding generations, the luxury of making the choices in life that we do. If criticism is heaved our way about the manner in which JCs collectively adopted, dealt with, and shaped their place in society, our model minorityness, it comes with the territory, I think.
Through music, I joined the band Kokoho Rose in 1978. I met Rick and Sean, Linda and Joyce, my neighbors Take and Tamio. And just like that, I was part of something bigger than myself.
One of the goals that I have in a performance is to think about what would make my mother laugh.
The thing that came for me and continues to inform my work is that in terms of diaspora, particularly Black diaspora, that it's something that has to be made and remade.
The intergenerational knowledge that's passed and the craftsmanship to make the container for the fireworks themselves is so beautifully crafted. And then it goes up into the sky and then prismatically scatters in multiple colors in multiple directions. And I was thinking diaspora is sort of like fireworks because the there's something that seems like it's the starting point, you can never recompile it into the singular thing, and the lights and the sounds and the smell go in multiple directions.
It's hard to give a land acknowledgement, because how do we acknowledge all of this theft, all of this violence, and all of the survival of people and of the land itself?
I started to see that this small encounter I had was actually reflective of a broader pattern in Japanese Canadian history and in the community more broadly. And that impulse was to possess, to reclaim, to repossess as a form of remembering what was lost. But questions kept creeping up. At what cost and at whose expense? What and who does the impulse to possess places like my family's farm and even places like Powell Street erase or obscure?
Food is a basic human right. Everyone deserves access and the ability to produce and distribute fresh, affordable, healthy, clean, sustainable, safe, and culturally appropriate foods.
If we could start thinking about things as not people's and not be so connected to saying that land is mine. How many people have bought into that illusion that they can own land in Canada? How many people do they continue to invite to this day to buy our corporations, to buy our lands, to expropriate our stuff? And I don't see First Nations people benefiting from it, and I don't see Black people or Asian people benefiting from it.
With or without you, this poll is going up. We asked them, what is the fear? What was that fear? And one said, well, it's an eyesore. I've never known, something so beautiful that was created by 9 women, homeless women, to, create this masterpiece. I was only the humble servant to assist these women. And to have somebody say that, well, that just cut like a knife right there. Because now we are brown women. And those doors shut on us. But how it shifted is when the elders came in.
Now is the time for Japanese Canadians and Asian settlers on this continent to think about our responsibilities and how we can take action. And I've come to see in my life that quite often the more money we have, the less generous we are with sharing it. I want to ask how we can collectively encourage each other to do better. If we own property, how can we develop new ways of thinking about our relationship to land? How can we restore Indigenous sovereignty to lands we occupy? I dream of a world where we all work to establish better relationships of deep consent for our bodies, for our communities, for the plant and animal beings, for our ancestral spirits, and for the waterways and lands we live on. It involves deep listening. It involves taking up less space. It involves finding wealth in our ability to give up power, resources, and land. And perhaps most of all, it involves remembering how to restore the flow of love and care in order to create a world where we don't leave anyone behind. That our worth will be based not on what we produce or own, but on the very fact that our existence is sacred.